On this episode of This Week in Photo, it is all about Nikon finally going mirrorless. This is TWiP. All right, so if you've watched This Week in Photo for any amount of time over the past, I don't know, half a decade or more, you know that I'm always talking about Nikon going mirrorless and mirrorless photography and Canon and all that. Looks like they may be going mirrorless, and we're going to talk about that tonight on the show. Here to do that with me is Mr. Giulio Sciorio and Mr. Ron Pepper. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
What's up?
Hello.
What's up? Okay, let's do that. Well, let's do some introductions first, because both of you haven't been on in a while, and a lot of stuff has happened, including TWiP, going Periscope down for a while. So let's talk about that. Giulio, let's start with you, man. Small camera, big picture was how we met, I think. You started that site, and we're doing all kinds of crazy stuff over there with mirrorless cameras. Give the audience that may not know who Giulio Sciorio is the elevator pitch about you and what you're up to now.
Cool. Well, I've been a professional photographer since 2005. I'm known as the godfather of animated photos, cinemagraphs, and one of the first professionals, if not the first professional, to come out openly in a big way and say, "Look, mirrorless cameras are the future. You gotta dive in. You're gonna end up with one anyways. So don't fight it." And then, of course, everyone just wanted to battle. Just wanted to scrap.
People love a good fight, man.
And now here we are. So. And I'm getting ready to launch small camera, big picture again after a long hiatus. And if you go to smallcamerabigpicture.com, you could just kind of sign in, and I'll let you know when it launches, but it'll be soon. And awesome.
We're going to talk about that. I really want to talk about that, because I remember you were doing a ton of cool stuff on small camera, big picture when we met. You were kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of jump both feet into the YouTube kind of arena. So thank you for that. And looking forward to seeing what you got going on over there. Also on the show is Mr. Ron Pepper. Ron, whenever I think Ron Pepper, I think panoramic photography and, what are those long words that they use? Equilateral, rectilinear, what?
Yeah, equirectangular projections.
Yeah. So tell us about you, man. What's your elevator pitch and what are you up to?
You're pretty nerdy, but this is a really nerdy part of photography. There's a lot of math involved and all that. But
yeah,
no, I'm part of the Lay Low trio as well, where I've I just moved, so I'm set up my new. Maybe this will be my new broadcasting little corner. I don't know, but I've been keeping busy mostly with HDR. I'm heavily involved with the Photomatics team, where I'm the main photographer and one of the representatives kind of by default.
Yeah.
And so it's keeping me busy, and I've been shooting less and doing less media things. And I'm really happy to be getting back into that, as we talked about last time I was on a couple of months ago. So I'm just happy to be here and get out there again and see everybody.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad to have you on the show, man. This is good. I know both of you guys personally, so this is going to be one of those conversations that just flows. It's just going to be us chatting about stuff. And like I said just in the chat room just now, I feel like there's going to be a little Thunderdome aspect to this chat. Yeah. I'm ready for that. All right,
before two men enter, one man leave.
That's right.
This subject matter could go all kinds of directions.
It is gonna go all kinds of directions, guys. Before we dive in, because the main news is, like I said in the tease, there Nikon going mirrorless. I have some important news to mention at the top of the show, and that is
you got one already.
The first sponsor for this new season of This Week in Photo, the first of many, but this is the first sponsor has signed on. So I want to give a huge thank you to Format.com. They've signed on as our first sponsor for starting today.
Right. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Format.com. They're rock. So their offer for the TWiP crew, for the TWiP membership, is a 14-day free trial, no credit card needed, at format.com/TWiP. Obviously, and they're knocking off 25% off the fees for the first entire year if you go to that URL and sign up. So 2 weeks for free and a quarter off the entire price for a full year. So, but you have to go to format.com/TWiP to try it out. So once again, thank you to format.com for sponsoring This Week in Photo. Guys, let's dive into the news. So Nikon is going mirrorless? Question mark. Giulio, when I think mirrorless, I think Giulio Sciorio. I see that beard. I see that bald head. I see those thick rimmed glasses. Whenever I think mirrorless, when you saw this, because you were affiliated with Panasonic. I mean, you know your way around Olympus cameras. You are the mirrorless guy. When you see Nikon getting ready to throw their hat into the ring, what's your first reaction?
Well, you mean when they're trying to do it a second time around?
Yeah.
Because the first time sucked.
So what's going to be different?
Let me emphasize it. It sucked. It was like the Ashton Kutcher camera at Target, and it just Ashton's powers were just not enough to get those crummy cameras in people's hands. I mean,
so Giulio, by the way, I'm a Nikon guy, and I want to ask you. It wasn't even interesting enough for me to get one, and that was when I had a little more disposable income. So what sucked about it? Just so we all, because I never even picked up the what was it called?
The One series.
One, yeah.
They were more like the None series.
The -1 series.
Okay, I'm being hard. You know, the thing is, I think that if it's Nikon and Canon for that matter, when they had their, even Canon's current mirrorless, the M, isn't it? Stand for but it's obvious that these are very half-hearted efforts, because it's not like Nikon or Canon don't know what they're doing. These are very capable companies with top engineers and designers. They know cameras. Mm-hmm. And for them to come out with that, it was both the M and the One. For any of us that grew up around those brands, were like, these guys are kind of, it was almost insulting. We're like, this is, with all of your might, this is what you do. Yeah. And I am supposed to buy it. Yeah. I'm like, it's insulting. And then Sony comes back with the biggest pimp hand in years. And, you know, now Nikon and Canon are kind of like, well, you know, maybe we should do something about it before we end up, you know, becoming the next Hasselblad, which is still a possibility for Nikon.
The news, just to put a box around this as we continue this discussion, is the bullet points are Nikon's coming out obviously with a mirrorless system, not just a camera, a mirrorless system. It's going to be coming out in early 2019, so that's still a ways out, right? And they are apparently there's going to be an adapter mount for the F mount for the lenses to allow you to use F mount lenses on the new mirrorless system.
So it's going to be another Sony?
Exactly, or insert camera name here. So Ron, tell me about what you think about this. So you're a Nikon shooter, obviously. Yeah. So you know your way around the brand. Olympus, yeah, for your mirrorless stuff. And you've been patiently waiting for what, 2 decades or so, right? So
not really. I mean,
you don't care, or do you care about mirrorless? Right?
I do. I love my Olympus setup. It's not I don't use it for my main, like my real specialty stuff. I still use the Nikon, but it has its own particular reasons, and we can get into that if needed. But there's some things that I think mirrorless is less good for. Mm-hmm. And my specialty of panoramic stuff with really wide angle shots is one of them. Yep. And it makes my life and my workflow easier to use my SLR. So that's cool. Now, sure, a couple of years ago, I would have thought, well, that's natural. Nikon comes out with one. I'll consider getting that. But I don't know if now those of us that are interested in mirrorless have probably already made that move, or we don't really need Nikon or Canon to come out with those. I think Nikon is doing it to stay relevant and stay healthy business-wise, but I don't know if it doesn't make me excited that they're coming out with one. And I'm also not one of those, for most products, I'm not one of those really fanboy types where I would never say, why would you ever use anything else? Or thank God so-and-so's coming out with this. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Let's wait and see. My idea is wait and see, and have a good reason for going mirrorless. If you have a good reason,
wait and see has been, at least on the mirrorless side of the house for Nikon, and I would argue Canon as well, the wait and see phrase has been their business model as it applies to mirrorless. And we've been waiting and seeing nothing for a long time. And now it's going to be 2019 until we see something. I love Nikon. I mean, that's what we used to shoot in the Air Force. I shot it for a long, long time. And I just recently sold all my Nikon stuff begrudgingly, because it has that heft and it just feels real, you know? But
Nikon's ability to not innovate has been shocking.
Well,
Like
it's unparalleled, right? So,
yeah, well, it's almost, Canon's out there, but similar, I guess. But the for I don't know how many years now I've been saying, because one of my main things in my shooting is bracketing. If you ever hear me talk about photos, bracketing is gonna come up somewhere. So because it's all bracketed, so it's HDR fused together.
yeah.
And I need that. That's part of my thing. So I have special equipment so that my Nikon does it more openly, and I can program it to do what I want. There's no reason for that, Nikon.
Yeah.
Why not let me just shoot at two shutter speed spacing when I'm bracketing? There's no reason.
It's all those little things, and it's the and Giulio, I want to get your thoughts on this. So there's the, why not Nikon? Like, or Canon, or insert manufacturer here. Why has it taken till 2018 or 2019 or 2020 for us to do this, when companies like Panasonic with Lumix, Sony, hello, Olympus, they've been innovating and they've proven the market. They've basically done all the market research for a Nikon out there for them to just like, hey, let's just copy that body and put Nikon on it, and make an adapter. Giulio, why haven't we seen that until hopefully 2019?
I think it's a very conservative politics internally of not wanting to go all out, and a lot of. I guess from my experience, a lot of the Japanese companies are like that. Sony's not like that. Sony's like, we're just going to put it out there, even if it's really just unfinished and sloppy and whatever. But we're going to put in a few really badass features and market the hell out of it, and people will buy it. And that's what happened. Real quick shout out to Trevor in the chat. He says, at this point, mirrorless are pushing beyond the boundaries of what a DSLR is capable of. So not only do they have to develop a mirrorless camera, it has to be better than anything they have. And that is on the point. I mean, the D850, that thing was just awesome, except for the video just totally sucked. I'm like, that technology exists. They could have put just baller video in there and really just crushed it for another year or two. And instead they kind of like, more of the same with kind of sort of better video. But it just kind of like, dude, it's like they just need to go all out. And I don't think people are asking for a ton of crazy stuff. It doesn't have to be like 5-stop IBIS or anything. That'd be nice. But if they just took the prism out, put a killer EVF in there, even if the body was the same size, and you can just put your lens mounts on, people would be happy with that. And then later on come out with a slimmer body with the same F mount, and just put a simple adapter that transfers the pins or whatever, and be done with it, and not like try to like, oh, just keep waiting. People are like, dude, hell with you. I'm going to go to Sony.
At a certain point, we're armchair quarterbacking, right? So we don't know what from an internal perspective of the Nikon factory and their glass works and all that. So we don't know what it would take corporate wise and what their bank account looks like in order to do this stuff. And Sony is this giant hungry gorilla that's growing, and then you got all these mirrorless players on these smaller mirrorless with micro four thirds growing and nipping at their heels, and then you got people like Ron Pepper that are diehard Nikon shooters, and they're on the fence. Should I go mirrorless? Should I not? Maybe not. I need something better, but for what I do, I need my DSLR. So they've got a lot of gods to appease. So Ron Pepper, do you think Nikon is hamstrung in terms of, the longer they wait, the thicker the quicksand and the more the gravity pulls them down into it, and the less is going to be, they'll have the less ability to escape it?
I think business-wise, that's true. I think they're being less and less relevant, and I think they kind of have to do this. But you guys were mentioning a couple of things. Giulio, you mentioned something really quickly, is the body size and the sensor size. We don't even know if we're talking about full frame. We assume we're talking about full frame.
It has to be full frame at this point.
We assume so. Yeah. But remember, there's a lot of people out there that when I'm talking about mirrorlesses, they think they're these small cameras, and that's being confused with micro four thirds usually. It's like if you're interested in going like a smaller size, this is probably not going to be for you. Yeah. Because I don't even know why. I don't know why yet. I hear people saying they're going to have to come out with a new line of glass, but why? Isn't the reason really to use your same good full frame?
That would be the gravity glass that Nikon has, is the glass, right?
Yeah, and for that reason, I'm not a big camera engineer, but they should be able to go with their same mount, shouldn't they? The body will look a little strange, but
they have to keep the F mount. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be, there's a whole thing I was learning about the Sony, where there's just a distance from sensor to body, the edge of the body, where you have to have a certain amount of space and et cetera. There's a whole bunch of smart things you have to know about, but they're going to have to make, I don't see why they would make a full frame mirrorless camera that's not going to use your good glass, and you're going to have the advantages of mirrorless with the good glass and the full frame sensor. And that just really means features. It doesn't mean that it's going to be significantly smaller size. So I just think that that's something that shouldn't be part of the consideration, is that you're getting a smaller box.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I think of this, I sold like 5 different Nikon lenses that I owned, and it reminds me, Fred Hasser in the chat is saying, I have a fortune in Nikon glass, and that's why my first hope is for an F mount mirrorless, smaller or not. I agree with both of those points. So F mount, absolutely. All their money is in F mount. If you don't support the F mount, which they say they're going to do with an adapter, but if you don't support the Nikon F mount, what's the point? You know, if I'm going to switch, I might as well switch to something like a Sony or a Panasonic or a Fuji or Olympus, right?
I'd be really interested in knowing why they're saying they need it.
Like the other thing is the size. So on the size side of it, I shoot Lumix, Panasonic Lumix. My camera of choice right now is a G9, and it's a good size, but I actually like it better with the battery grip on it for what I shoot. I like a big, hefty camera because I just like the weight of it. But if I'm just going out on a walk around the park or around the neighborhood or whatever, I can get I have a smaller body as well that also uses my Micro Four Thirds lenses. So I'm not going to depend on one camera to suit every situation that Frederick's going to be in, right? I don't know. What do you think, Giulio? I mean, is it like, I don't know. I mean, I'm confused at what Nikon's doing.
Choose the right tool for the job in the situation.
Well, the thing is, you know, I said it a moment ago, it has to be full frame. That's really for marketing purposes. Full frame, it's so overkill what we're getting out of the latest sensors. They're so amazing. And
full frame is like the Hemi of the camera world.
Yeah, they're just overkill for like 99% of what people shoot. But I mean, I meet people on my photo walks all the time. They're like, I'm going to go get a full frame camera. I'm like, oh, great. How was that? Cool. How's that going to help you with your photography? Like, I don't know. So, someone just told me, or they name off somebody that they respect, that I have to have full frame. And it's totally not true. The sensor is important, but it's the most important thing is that the camera is not a roadblock. So if, you know, the Nikon comes out, however they do it, and I do hope they come out and be very successful. That's good for everybody. If it comes out and it's got really just awesome usability and you're able to get to your shots faster than ever before, and I'm not talking about fast with just AF, but operation wise, and maybe you can transfer, I don't know, something crazy like transfer RAWs really quick to wireless to.
It's got to do some magic, right?
A Narbox or something. There's got to be something, and I think, oh, hey, here's an idea. How about not to have crappy software bundled with the camera? That would be a first, actually. So Nikon, that's a free tip.
Why don't they just not put any software with the camera? We don't need that.
That's how bad it's got, right? But what if they did? What if they did?
Take it out of the price. Don't bother with the software, and it'll be good. But if Nikon's listening, the idea is that in your mirrorless camera, maybe this is what's been holding them back, is that they don't want to give up any of what we like about DSLRs. You know, my thing is when I take my mirrorless camera, say to sports, and I would only take it to sports for fun, like my kids' stuff and all that. Yeah. And I'm frustrated by the way my Olympus operates sometimes, because I love my Olympus, but there's some frustrations, like where if I get a shot, it takes a second to do its processing before I can really start again. So unlike an SLR where you just snap away, the mirror goes and you're immediately ready again. If you stop shooting on that camera, it'll take a couple of beats before it's ready for you again, before the EVF opens up again so that you can see again. And so little things like that, I hope they're trying to attack that, and hope they're going to say, listen, we didn't put out a mirrorless until we could solve all the problems that there are some. We could solve all the problems that mirrorless brings up. We didn't want to take a step back in any areas. I hope that's why they held back so long.
That's what I'm hoping for. I mean, that from putting on my marketing guy hat, that'd be some easy copy to write, right? So you know,
true.
You've been waiting for a decade.
Yeah.
And look at this pearl that we've created.
Yeah.
We've learned from all the mirrorless providers and all the, the other guys out there, and we've created the ultimate camera, and Nikon is back. And then, a week later, their market cap triples, and now everyone's afraid of Nikon again. That would be the fantasy hope. Giulio, is that going to happen, you think?
It's possible. It's possible. I remember when I was shooting, because I shot Nikon film and Hasselblad for years, and when the N90S came out, the N90 was like, all right. When the N90S came out, I was like, oh, damn, this is it. I felt like this was like fast. I mean, their whole thing was fast and accurate, because that's all it needed to be. And it was just awesome. And I went out and grabbed one right away. But with the mirrorless, it could be like if they, sure, maybe they use their current lens lineup, but maybe they have 2 or 3 just baller lenses that have specific features for this new mount, whatever it is. Maybe it's an f2 zoom that's not so big. I mean, I don't know, whatever it is. But if they have something like that, and then if they wanted to beat Sony, Sony's going to probably make their sensors anyway, so they have to have a customized sensor, something that's different. It's not to be better, this has to be different. And then, of course, beat Sony on the usability. That's
not easy. I can their
well, right. I mean, so, if it comes out and the usability is not good,
on the usability, both in their software and their camera OS. I'm sorry. I mean, sorry, chat room, if you shoot Sony, but if you do, Sony, they're not exactly the Apple of camera operating systems. Let's say that. So.
No, it's nightmarish.
Yeah.
But they have to. Everyone needs to be looking at Sony right now for mirrorless. Then they have to beat them in terms of not necessarily, obviously, like we talked about, the interface and the usability, which is probably like a 4 out of 10 at best, but the marketing muscle behind Sony, whoever's behind the marketing of Sony, is just you guys get a round of applause. I mean, you guys are awesome.
Oh yeah.
And the image quality when you do get a shot that you've wanted to get, because I found the cameras to be quite inconsistent shot to shot, unfortunately. When you do get it, it's like, wow, it's really cool, but it is like so much detail for what I do is photographing people. I'm like, I don't need to see eye boogers. Like,
it's the right tool. You don't need to see them. You don't need to see things before they happen. And you hit it right on the head, G, with the Sony's marketing department being on it. And it doesn't take a whole lot to be on it. I don't think it takes money to be on it. And Sony, I remember Sony got downgraded a couple of years ago to a penny stock. You guys remember that? They got downgraded to a penny stock. And this was when they were like spinning off divisions, and the only 2 profitable divisions, I think, within Sony were the digital imaging division, i.e. digital cameras, etc., and PlayStation. That was the only ones that were keeping the company alive. But then you look, like, from a consumer perspective, you look at, okay, where are they spending their money? Go to any trade show and look at any photography trade show. Look at the largest booth on the floor, and you'll see a Sony world over there, with all their Sony and whatever, their spokespeople there. They're giving away cameras, and it's just a Sony wonderland. They dump a lot of money on every trade show, and then you look at billboards and magazine and internet and on and on. They're spending money they're spending money, and then they're backing it up with a product that does magical things for photographers. So that's a 1-2 punch if you need that full frame multi-megapixel sensor, right? So Ron, before we jump on to the next topic, I want to get your thoughts on, so you're with Nikon now. The goal is, let's just paint a utopian future. The goal is Nikon will create a camera that you'll be like, okay, this is the obvious jump for me because I have all this glass and I want to move over there. It's F-mount, it's perfect, and it's got all this new stuff. Would that tempt you, even, because you're a Nikon shooter, would that tempt you to move to whatever this new system is? Or would you just be like, you know what, Nikon's now going in that direction, so I don't like that, I'm going to go to something else. And the reason I couch it like that is because the last piece of Nikon gear that I spent good money on was their 360 camera. Remember the 360 camera that I bought? That thing, that was one of the few pieces of photography hardware that I actually boxed up and sent back.
Was it the key mission?
Talk to me before you buy anything panoramic.
The key failed mission 360. Yeah. So what do you think, Ron? Are you going to gamble on them with a version 1 product?
I'm going to be looking at it with interest, but I'm not all that excited. It's funny. Maybe it's a stage in life where I don't just go out and buy the new thing anymore. Mm-hmm. I have lots of stuff to spend money on already. So I would have already gone Sony if there were just a couple little things that make me really spend, because the one I want is the really high res rotating, overlapping for panoramic, right? So I want the really high, 52 megapixel or something. That's a ridiculous number for most people, but I actually have a rare use case for the high res. So I think it was 42. Anyway, there's still a few things that are not just perfect on the Nikon, on the Sonys. They're good. If I needed a camera now, I'd get one, frankly. And I'll look at Nikon the same way. I'm not like you're building me up as being really tied to Nikon, but that's what I use and I like it, but I'm not that stuck with it. So I'm going to look with a lot of interest if I can use my same lenses, if it gives me the fabulous mirrorless things that I'm looking for, like that bracketing control. It doesn't have to be mirrorless, but for some reason, only the mirrorless camera manufacturers will open up so I can do that. I don't know why, but it'd be the biggest fail in the world if Nikon comes out with this and doesn't even open up that function for us. It's just software. Yeah. So I'll be looking at it with interest, but I'm not overly excited about it. It was inevitable, and it's about time. And
I wonder when I think of these kind of moves, and I just put this in the chat room. When I think of these kind of moves, I think of in terms of being late to an already mature market. I think of GoPro with the Karma drone versus DJI and all of their. You remember that, Giulio?
the Nikon Karma. You've waited long enough.
Yes, yeah.
Here it comes.
Yeah, and not only, I mean, if we rewind back to the TWiP when we talked about GoPro and the Karma, not only did they come to the market late and overhype the product was falling out of the sky. So drones falling out of the sky as an inferior product that's late to market, kiss of death for a marketing department. That's almost like, I don't know, how are you going to deal with that? So I don't know. Closing thoughts from both of you guys. Giulio, we'll start with you on Nikon mirrorless.
This is it, I think, and I think Nikon knows that this is more or less their last chance to get a foothold in the next generation of photographers. Now, mind you, I see a lot of people still shooting Nikon DSLRs and Canon DSLRs. It's because they're really good cameras. And as long as you're okay with what you don't get, then, and you're cool with what you get out of it, then they're great. But as far as like being known as like a leader, this is really their last chance. They can't mess it up again. If they do, they're going to be the next Hasselblad. They'll get gobbled up by some conglomerate, or maybe they are already. I don't know. But they'll get muddled down into a Hasselblad situation again.
Yeah, or Google will buy them, right?
I don't. Why would Google buy them?
Who knows? Why does Google buy anything and kill it? So.
They would just buy it and sell it off to DxO anyway.
Maybe that's Google's thing. They buy companies and they like. It's like buying an old farm animal. We're like, we're just buying you to put you down just because we know it's time, and they're going to bring Nikon to the barn and give it a little bit.
You heard it here first, folks. Giulio likens Google buying Nikon to buying an old farm animal.
They're going to, bring it in. They're going to pet it. Oh, it's good. And they're going to put that like zapper thing up the head.
I'm optimistic though, guys. I mean, we joke about it, but I still love Nikon. But I think about Nikon and I think about what happened to, or what is and what happened to Kodak, for example. I think about what happened to Yahoo, who were once on top of the world and no longer. I mean, you could start listing out these brands that were staples in their individual genres and that are now like, they were a headline on CNN and now they're on to the next news bite, right? It's just over just like that. Nikon could be the same way. It'd be like, in other news, Nikon files for Chapter 11 and blah, 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 right? I don't want to see that. I want to see Nikon use the superpowers that they have and the expertise that they have to crush Sony, to crush all these other players, or to do something to energize the market and create something seriously competitive. But based on their track record, it doesn't seem like it's going to go in that direction. Ron Pepper, what do you think, man? What are your closing thoughts on Nikon mirrorless?
I would say, dear Nikon, you could have gone a few different ways. You could just keep doing what you're doing and it wouldn't be as big a market, but keep making great glass and keep supporting those things. And that's going to go on forever, even less and less. But if you're going to go this route, you got to hit it out of the park. You took the time, you've been watching what everybody else is doing. I hope you've been listening to the pros and the cons, because there are pros and cons with both kinds of cameras. Got to hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
It would be so embarrassing if they don't.
That's the word. That's the word, embarrassing, if they don't. All right, guys, let's move on to the next topic, and that's DxO. That's another brand that's kind of made its name. DxO made its name in a couple of areas, specifically in their DxO Mark score and how they score different lenses and cameras, etc., which they were attempting to be sort of an industry go-to metric for that sort of measurement. And then also they launched a little camera that plugs into your iPhone. They've got software. They bought Nik software. The news is, I'm going to read the headline here. This is a headline from Petapixel. DxO confirms bankruptcy and says Nik collection update is still on track. So, this is a sad This Week in Photo.
Before we talk about that company anymore, didn't you also buy that camera?
I did. I have it. It's in a drawer, and it's probably in that drawer right there. Yeah. And it's cool. And I said this on the show, actually. I was talking on This Week in Photo when that thing came out. It's a great little camera. The DxO1 is what we're talking about. Plugs into your iPhone. It's got a FireWire jack on it, the lightning jack on it. Plugs into your phone and gives you a bunch of features and better optics, etc., than your normal in-camera phone does. The problem that I highlighted when they launched it was the camera that's in the phone is already pretty dang awesome, and they keep getting better and better, and it's integrated with the software and hardware, and Apple they're about to become $1 trillion company, and they're clearly not slowing down on innovation. Can this one company build something that you have to actually remember to charge and plug in order to get a marginally better photo? And I think the answer was that people are like, not so much. I don't know if I really need to spend that much money to have something that's marginally better than what I already have. I don't know, Ron. What do you think?
I think with a new every year plan, with the cameras getting like you said, pretty solid. I mean, that iPhone camera now it makes me leave my camera home.
It's
more
beautiful.
And more often.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
It is what it is. It's the new pocket aim and shoot, and that DxO is not getting updated, right? You don't get a new one every year, do you? New glass?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
But they can update the firmware, but obviously that's it.
It's kind of weird, and I guess they're looking for the traveling Nik collection to save them or partially save them anyway.
The poor Nik team, man.
Interesting moves. I mean, the DxO makes good software from they make had amazing raw conversion software forever.
Yeah.
And
they patented it. Didn't they patent that control point technology where you drop a pin in an area and it sort of examines the pixels around it and you drag a slider, kind of what's in Snapseed right now, right?
That was Nik, wasn't it?
It was Nik. Yeah.
DxO though, yeah.
Yeah, Nik patented it, but then DxO bought Nik, so now they own the patent, and I don't know, it's confusing. I don't know, Giulio. What about you, man? The DxO. Do you care about this kind of software? Do these things affect you at all in your line of work?
Well, not with my current workflow, which we can chat here whenever you guys are ready to piss off a lot of people. But I got a DxO1 and I loved it. Like I loved the hell out of it. And if you used it right, like you could get. Because it would do like a 3 DNGs in a package and as one DNG, kind of like what the iPhone is doing now with Lightroom Mobile. But I was able to shoot like ISO 12,000, and once I if I ran it through DJI, if I ran it through like DxO software, it actually looked really good. It was just a little slow, and it was a little expensive, but kind of if I remove the artist side, I mean, look at the business side, they just blew their wad in marketing the hell out of that thing. They should have just kind of just not spent so much money and doing all these trade shows and all these big magazine ads, which are kind of useless for a product that's so niche. Because photographers, I don't know what it is with photographers. We don't like to take on new technology and try to utilize it in our toolbox. Often we kind of like, I've been doing the same thing for 20 years. I'm going to keep doing it. And damn it, if I change, which is fine if that's what it works. But if you want to keep growing, it's like, just try something different. But anyways, they just really poorly marketed a very futuristic product, like being able to take it off the phone and it's still working wirelessly. All these things about it that were really cool. It was just too slow and a little too expensive. If it was like $300, I think would have been fine.
Yeah.
Maybe the fact you had a 1-inch sensor on your, I mean, you could put it on your iPad and like this gargantuan screen and get DSLR, close to DSLR quality photos out of it.
The hardware and software are fantastic, but in a lot of ways, because of, I mean, if you zoomed out and looked at the timeline, in a lot of ways, it was a cure in search of a disease, right? Because in an already healthy body, because the iPhone and Android, I would argue, the mobile phone ecosystem is pretty robust. I mean, the Huawei's, the Samsungs, the Apples, they're throwing like buckets of money at computational photography algorithms that work in concert with your phone OS, that down to the pico whatever know what your optics are doing. So they're fine tuning all this stuff, and which makes the argument for the marketing people at DxO that much harder. Right. So now, now they have to say, okay, this is why you should buy this thing and pay no attention to the excellent $1 billion camera that Apple put into your phone. Right.
Yeah. But the thing is, and I've actually done a few assignments with my iPhone, start to finish. And it's okay. But at the end of the day, it's still an iPhone photo. And when you're shooting on an iPhone, you're missing the tactile buttons of your camera, and it's like if you're using your camera, you're never going to get like a call from like your mom or somebody. Hey, what are you doing? I want to talk to you about my Metamucil or whatever. You're like, I'm gonna shoot, Mom. Well, it was just too expensive. It really was. I mean, if it was $200, it would have sold the crap out of it. Because if you look at like what Moment is doing, like Moment lenses, their lenses are like a C note a pop, and people are buying those things hand over fist. And I personally, I'm a fan of what they're doing, but I don't use them because I'm like, I'm not going to spend, several $100s on a set of lenses for a phone that I replace every year, and it may or may not work a year later. But they're selling a ton of them. Where if you figure you're buying 3 or 4 of those lenses, you're in $400 or $500 easy. So, but they have clever marketing, and that's really where DxO really sucked. It was with whoever was running that ship, or whoever was making the final decision, saying, no, don't go do this, spend money here. It was just like a catastrophe, and they probably should not have purchased the Nik collection, because their software they had prior to that was really good. Again, it wasn't marketed. And I don't understand why it wasn't marketed. So when everyone was always talking about DxO scores, well, dude, get people to start talking about, they're going to your website, convert them over to so they can know about your camera and about your software. But I mean, what do I know?
I don't know. I mean, well, you think about, I mean, look, you think about the path of least resistance. I mean, we as humans are lazy, right? For the most part. The path of least resistance for me in my workflow and the things that I shoot are 99% of the time I have my iPhone 10 in my pocket. I'm running around. I can launch the camera quickly. I can shoot video. I can shoot 4K, slow motion, panoramas. I can do 90% of the, let's call it, hollow calorie photography that I need to do with just my phone. If I need a real meal, I can go grab my mirrorless camera and get real photography. It feels like they were trying to fill the slot in between those two, and it's a really narrow slot of space between what my mirrorless stuff can do and what my phone can do natively. And it came down to, well, maybe I'll just keep this DxO1 in the car, in the glove compartment, and if something comes up, I'll have that. I can get a great image. And then I forgot it was there, and then it discharged, and so there's all these other issues. Ron, before we leave this, what do you think?
2 things about the camera. I think they probably started developing it, a couple of years before it ever came out, obviously, and they probably didn't realize how good these mobile phone cameras were going to be by the time it came out. That's kind of my guess. But I also was going to say, when you're talking about marketing and the non-marketing of DxO, I agree. Maybe they bought the Nik collection for marketing. Because there's been very few things as well marketed as the Nik collection. They were at every trade show. They were out there doing all kinds of promotion and giveaways and boom all the time.
And it's great software
right until the end. And maybe they want the name, they want the media coverage that they're getting, and maybe that's part of the move.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, let's wait and see. Maybe they'll pull a rabbit out of the hat on the other side,
it wasn't expensive to buy it.
Yeah, on the other side of it, I think this is just evolution in the photography space. We're seeing, what was it? Just the last episode or episode before last, we talked about SmugMug buying Yahoo. When would you ever think you would have said that sentence back in the day, right? I mean, Flickr. SmugMug buying Flickr, and Flickr was the 500-pound gorilla, right? In photography. In fact, most of these other companies were looking at Flickr. I'm sure they had whiteboards of Flickr's user interface flow as they developed their own stuff. And now SmugMug is big enough. Granted, they've been executing, and now they're big enough, and Flickr got small enough to get acquired by. It's a crazy time, which means everything's on the table. Like DxO filing bankruptcy, Nikon, they're about to shoot their last flare in the air, and hope someone sees it. It just goes on and on. I mean, what's going to happen next week? It's crazy.
If I recall, didn't Yahoo buy Flickr?
Yeah.
To kind of save Yahoo at one point.
Yeah.
That's how I recall it.
Yeah.
It's like, come on aboard the Titanic. It's all safe.
They really went.
We got Melissa Mayer here. She's going to laugh our way to success.
Pay no attention to the iceberg. We got this under control. All right, guys. We're at the end of this segment. Thanks for covering those two topics with me. I want to remind the chat room that get your questions in there. Christopher Berry, the TWiP community manager, is in there holding down the fort, and he is collating your questions, copying and pasting them into a Google document on the other side of my screen here that as you type them in, so I don't have to scroll through the chat. When we get to the TWiP or to the chat segment, I'll be reading those questions. So please get your questions in as soon as possible. We're going to get to that segment right after this next one. And once again, I want to remind you guys that we do have a brand new sponsor on This Week in Photo. That's format.com. Head over to format.com/TWiP, and you'll get 25% off your first year and a 14-day free trial. That's format.com/TWiP. This episode is sponsored by Format, the website platform designed to help you showcase your work and uncover new opportunities. Format.com is the top choice to build your portfolio website. Voted most trusted by artists, designers, illustrators, photographers, models, and more. Creative professionals across the globe use Format to showcase their work. It's simple. As a creative professional, you need a website that reflects the quality of your work, and Format's easily customizable themes showcase your work in the best way possible. And making changes to your website is quick and simple with their powerful yet easy to use editor. Basically, there's zero coding experience needed. The Format team designed the platform with creative business needs in mind. You get a fully functional site with e-commerce, client proofing, marketing, blogging tools, and more. So you really never have to look anywhere else. And to top it all off, the Format support team is made up of professional creatives like you who are available to answer your questions 24/7. You can ask them anything about your website and they'll respond within minutes. Start your 14-day free trial today at format.com/TWiP. Then you'll get 25% off your first year. That's format.com/TWiP. All right, guys, let's jump into our featured discussion. The featured discussion is twofold. This is featured discussions, one for each of you, because each of you are experts in your respective field. Julio, we're going to start with your featured discussion. I'm about to throw a stick of dynamite into the chat room. So
I'm just going to kick back now. I'm just going to
brace yourselves. Julio says Lightroom CC is the future of workflow for professional photographers. Lightroom, and if you know Lightroom, you know recently Adobe split it into Lightroom Classic, which is the Lightroom we all know and love, and Lightroom CC, which is kind of a cloud-based version of the digital asset management app. Giulio thinks the cloud version is the future. Giulio, you're on the stage, man. I'm putting the spotlight on you.
I'm telling you, it is the future. I mean, we got to
gladiator.
We got to think outside the box here. Try to think out. Okay, the launch was rough, and I was all over social media being like, "What the hell are they doing to Lightroom?" And then I realized that I was using Lightroom CC, which is now, here's where the confusion starts, which was classic, which is now classic, but I was using that for the longest time and then putting my images on Lightroom Mobile, which is now Lightroom CC. Mm-hmm. Are you all confused? Because it sounds confusing, but you can see like how this would confuse people, and the rollout was just like, it was bumpy. It was like, just going to go skateboard down a mountain, basically. But once I started using it and I calmed my ass down, I was just like, yeah, this was great. So little by little, I've been moving all my content over to Lightroom CC. I'm about 25,000 images. I got about 150 more to go. I'm going to be basically maxed out. And they're 10 terabyte plan. It's like, what's like $100 a month. But I'll tell you,
where are you moving it from exactly?
From Lightroom Classic.
And what's involved with doing that?
So you can only do one catalog at a time. But what I'm doing is I'm exporting a collection as a catalog, and then I'm importing that basically one job at a time, and that way I can make sure it's all transferred over. And then I go through and I delete any rejects. I'm kind of really, my catalog's really just nice and tight as a tiger. But the main thing is the workflow. So my first assignment was with the Austin Contemporary Museum. They commissioned me to do this shoot with an artist called Wangechi Mutu from Nairobi, and I was the only one allowed to see her do her thing. And I had two attempts to do it. I could not talk to her. I couldn't give her any direction. I was like basically being hired to do street shooting of this world famous artist. And I had to get them the content fast. And the only way I could do that was basically take my camera, my SD card, put it in my iPad Pro. I was connected. I went through, I did the work in the back of the Uber on the way back to my house. And when I got back, right from my iPad, I shared a collection and allowed them to download it. And I was done. Like, as soon as I got home, I cracked open a beer because I was done. I was like, cool. And I was like, this is amazing. The clients loved it. They could sign in. They could comment on stuff. Like, I don't have to go buy all these different components. And then on top of that, I've switched my portfolio website over to ProSite. Well, they call it Adobe Portfolio now. And so Lightroom and Behance are powering my portfolio. So it's all, but the thing is, I'm able to do all of this off my iPhone. So often I'll be like making my coffee in the morning, and a client, I get an email and they're like, hey, I need this image. I can pull it up real fast. I can send it to them right there. I can either email it to them, text it to them. It's so fast and convenient for workflow, and all the tools that you're used to in Lightroom Classic will eventually make its way over.
Yeah, see, that's the caveat though, and that's what I want to challenge you on, because when I look at Lightroom CC and I think consumer amateur, and not saying amateur in a negative connotation, but amateur as in not paying your mortgage with photography. I don't think professional. When I look at Lightroom Classic, which is the normal Lightroom, I think powerful. I think, I can extendable. I think I can, lock it into Photoshop and do my work. I think workflow when I think the other one. Neither one is perfect. In fact, Steve in the chat room is talking about, people moving to Capture One, which I'm looking at as well. But Giulio, how do you address that though? Because there's a lot of missing features, and I haven't dived into Lightroom CC that much to kind of understand what all the missing features are. But from people that I talk to that have used it and kind of vomited all over it, they say it's just missing too many features. They can't do their work normally. It's all cloud based, et cetera, et cetera. What do you say to those people? Are you living in the past and you've mastered dark matter and are on it, and you're on a different string in string theory? Like, what's going on?
Well, you got anybody who's watched the show that knows me, and I know you guys know me as someone who's always the first soldier on the field. I'm doing better at avoiding all the arrows.
You are, yeah.
But I see this and I'm like, oh, this is amazing, because I've been trying to do wireless workflow for years. I blogged about it with small camera, big picture and stuff. But the thing is, if your workflow right now is reliant on classic, stay with classic. Don't change. Yeah. You could always just take your pics, your finals, and put those in the cloud on CC. So at least you have a backup in the cloud, right? Because your drives will fail. You can have 5 drives in different places. All those drives are just little records spinning. Eventually, they'll fail. So you'll have a backup in the cloud, and then you could share quickly. So maybe one thing I do in CC is I have a folder, and in that folder I have 2 albums, and these are specifically for social media. I have 2 share, and then I have shared. So anything that I like, I put in my 2 shared album, and I curate that. I organize it through color or subject matter, whatever it is I'm into. And then when I share it, you can share it right from Lightroom CC on your phone. Then I move it over to the shared album, and then I can kind of recycle them over time. So that alone, even if you still need CC for a specific, or classic for a specific workflow, you could still use CC, because eventually it's all going to move over to it. It's going to move over to it anyways. Now, Capture One Pro is an awesome piece of software. And if you have a Sony, you don't own Capture One Pro, you just got to get it. It's really
free,
good.
Right? Doesn't it come with Sony? At least a limited trial version, right?
A limited version, yeah. But I mean, it's like $70 to buy the full-fledged version for Sony. Just buy it.
Yeah.
And if you really do, if you have a specific workflow that like for like Digitex, when I do commercial shoots, I hire Digitex. They come with their cameras, and they're using C1 Pro because it tethers, everything tethers really good to C1 Pro. I'm not going to be like, no, you got to run cards on my iPhone. Use C1 Pro. Yeah. And it's a great piece of software. But for my workflow, which is very minimal, I do most of my work in camera. When I get it into Lightroom, I do a little dodge and burn, a little color work, and then I deliver. Tools I have now,
you're not doing lens correction and vignetting and all that stuff.
No, right? I find personally that digital cameras have been beyond the point of good enough since like 2011. And when you start adding digital corrections to it, and lens corrections and vignetting corrections, then you go back and you add a little vignetting in, you add a little grain and all that stuff. It just really looks so digital and gross for me, for my work. I don't apply those settings. Most of the time I don't use noise reduction, which I have in Lightroom if I want to use it. I don't do lens correction, which I have somewhat, because Micro Four Thirds cameras have the corrections built in, but often I'll just turn them off. For my workflow, it's freaking awesome. And like, I want to update my website, I can go out, have coffee, update it on my phone. It automatically will update my portfolio on my pro site. I don't have to render out, then re-upload them, SEO. It's done. Yeah. It's done, dude. I'm like, I don't want to spend my life messing with stuff. I got a Drobo I bought a year ago for like $1,500 with drives. It hardly mounts anymore.
Yeah.
I'm waiting, dude. I'm gonna give that to Google, and they can take that and Nikon in the barn and just like,
Yeah. Well, that's a whole,
it is the future,
a whole other discussion, right? I mean, if you get your workflow nailed and all that, we're not even going to dive into the privacy concerns and the all your eggs in one basket that belong to the Google, that or the Adobe.
You could always back it up separately. You can always back up your files on a local drive and have that synced separately. But here's the thing: we were just talking about these getting better and better, right? Mm-hmm. So just imagine that your iPhone is now as good as let's just go be crazy. Say the quality is as good as an A7R3, right? And you're like, oh, I don't ever need anything else. This is amazing. It's on my phone. So are you at that point going to take your photos, plug it into a computer, download them, put them in a Lightroom Classic or Capture One or Luminar or whatever you're using, do your edits, then render it out, get it back on your phone just to share it and to deliver it to your client? Or are you just going to use the camera in Lightroom Classic, which is awesome because it actually does a raw DNG HDR. It's amazing. And then, just deliver it right there on the spot,
right? Especially
if you're in a time constraint, it doesn't make sense. And frankly, that's where it's heading. I mean, like I said, I've done assignments with my phone why would I process it in something else other than what is optimized for the phone?
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to soapbox and get off here, but, and guys, and I told you guys this before you even started rolling. I say this all the time. You can have the most badassiness of badassness camera, and you're taking this picture, and it's something just like amazing. I don't know, aliens, naked chicks and waterfalls, something, maybe both. And you're like, you're already putting in, you're already like on the DMV, you're changing your driver's license name to Zeus because you're a god. And you're like, I'm just going to be this pimpiness of pimp when on Instagram. And then you post it, it's on Instagram, it's on a screen. It's like the size of a transparency, and people are looking at it in Starbucks, and that's where it ends up. So no matter what you do, guys, it ends up on Instagram or some social media site, and people are gobbling up with their phone. If you're awesome, you get a heart. If you're super awesome, you get like a thumbs up emoji or something like that.
That's what you live for.
That is the freaking reality of the industry. Like it or not, man.
Yeah, right. No, absolutely. Pepper, what do you think about this, man? I mean, the Lightroom CC versus Lightroom Classic versus putting all your digital assets in the cloud and letting Google manage them for you, the streamlined workflow. Where do you fall on all this stuff?
I had so many questions come up during that rant.
Rant. Yeah, that was Giulio's rant.
And I use both. Like, I have an Adobe subscription, and I use them both. I use CC lightly because I use that to get it over to my iOS devices so I can share them. But I still have kind of there's so many things. I guess I have like the soft conclusion to say that, man, everybody has their things they need and the things they like. And
yeah, it's workflow.
Giulio here can get the shot 99% there in the camera. He doesn't need anything else except his iPad Pro in the back of the Uber. So that's awesome. I'm usually having to do a very delicate raw conversion and then combine images and stitch them and blah, blah, blah. So that's not for me. But for fun things and hopefully not professional things in my case, then I would use it. But it's not because of a quality issue. There's just so many questions, so many things. So you've got to find the workflow that works. And if I could do a job like you just said and have it done and delivered by the time you got back to home or hotel, I would do that.
Yeah,
I would use it. So
that's the future.
I don't have any hate for that idea at all. I think depending on one of the things it depends on is the final use, like social media and things. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, get it out there. You know what? Get out some say behind the scenes shots or some look what this is a sample of what you're going to see later shots. Get those out early to keep your clients or whatever excited, or the group excited. Do all those things in that. And then if you need to go to something more powerful, we haven't even mentioned Photoshop. If you need to like start layering it up, then you might go there. So
yeah, it's not a one size fits all proposition, right?
The great thing is there's a million options out there. There's Capture One. There's a lot of others that are competing here. So man, it's just a fun discussion. So
yeah, no, this is good stuff. So the second part of this feature discussion, see, Giulio, you made it through this and you survived, right? We did not skin you during this episode of This Week in Photo. The second part of this is this is a technology that I'm really, really interested in, but I'm also really, really afraid of. And that is this cryptocurrency and blockchain technology as it applies to the kind of stuff that I do, which is, online marketing, e-commerce, membership, that kind of stuff, or just photography in general. How does blockchain, Bitcoin, all these different currencies, should I be caring about those right now? We could do a whole show on this, but Ron is an expert in this stuff. And
no, not an expert.
Okay, Ron knows more. Like we said on the phone yesterday, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. You got one eye. So I want to have you, before we dive into it just a little bit, I want to have you demystify blockchain, and how this stuff works. Is, what's the elevator pitch for using cryptocurrencies?
Well, I guess I should present it this way: is that I've been a photographer for a long time. It's a business, it's a passion, but I also have other interests, right? And one of those for years has been the whole. Originally, it was Bitcoin, which was the only thing and only part of this discussion back at the time, until a couple of years ago when people started using the underlying technology that made the currencies and there's a lot of currencies out there. Forget the currencies. There's this underlying technology that allows other things, believe it or not. And I'm finding things that apply to photography, apply to social media, apply to other things in life. And I've really been excited to bridge those things together. And so I guess the thing that I noticed when I was asked to be on the show is the other day, I noticed that there's a iPhone app now for something called, and it's a bad name, it's called Steep Shot. Steep is in like steeping tea, because it comes from a larger company called Steam It. Okay, so the idea behind Steam It is that you can blog and post articles and keep control and ownership of those things instead of posting them to other places.
Right.
And when people give those hearts and things that you mentioned earlier, Giulio, those likes and things, you actually get paid for that in a very small way, but it adds up. So I've noticed for maybe, let's say a year or something, I've heard of people that post articles on Steemit. I think it's STEEM.it, I believe, or steemit.com, I can't remember. But people have been posting articles there and photos there and getting some income from that.
Yeah.
So right now and that income is ready. Of course, it's one of these cryptocurrencies that the income comes in. It's their own Steam. It has Steam. That's the currency. So you're earning, and you can convert it into cash, or you can convert it into other things. But the point is not to get off into a cryptocurrency discussion.
Yeah.
The point
Which we will do in a different show for sure.
We can do it another time. Yeah. But there's these underlying technologies there's people out there innovating to say, you know what, let's put our content out there and have other ways of making some income from it, instead of just putting our content out there onto other, Facebooky places where they use it for their reasons and that they make a lot of money from that.
Yeah.
Now this new one, which I don't like the name, but it's basically Instagram-ish thing. If you're on I don't know if it's worth showing on the screen here now, not really, but it's just an Instagram style app, and it has that same idea where when you upvote things, that turns, if you get enough, that starts turning into income for you. And I really kind of wanted to bring it out because I put 2 photos on there just to try it out and see what happens. I think I have 17 followers already. I don't know if that's a lot or not, but
wow.
But I think whether this one, Steemit is already popular, so it's going to, I think, continue. But I think there's going to be solutions like this that apply to us, where instead of having Instagram where they have certain ownership of your images, where somebody else, remember that story where someone was printing images from Instagram, adding their own commentary, and then made an art show with it and was selling these things. So they were taking other people's photos. They'd never even met them or talked to them, but they were printing their photos, adding some commentary, making that was apparently a derivative then.
Yeah, it's editorial
so that they
derivative.
could sell it.
Yep.
And that held up legally. So because
You're talking about Richard Prince, aren't you?
I don't know. I just came out of my memory from somewhere.
That's okay. That's who it is.
But one part of what I noticed when I signed up on this Steep Shot is that I'll show my iPhone again for anybody watching. The terms of service all fits on one screen on my phone.
Yeah,
it's not showing.
Yeah,
anyway,
so Ron, I got a question for you. So you get paid a little bit, but where does the money come from? Is it so if I like your photo, do I pay a little bit?
I'm new enough to this that I'm trying to figure out
it's got to come from somewhere to end up somewhere, even though the money itself isn't real, just like our dollars are not real because it's not based on gold, it's based on debt. So somewhere somebody is getting into debt, and I'm curious as to where that begins, and then, we all know it converts into dollars at the end, but
yeah, and that what you just said, for me as someone who is an entrepreneur, solopreneur, or whatever, those are the questions that keep me from jumping in with both feet, which is why I'm glad I have Ron Pepper here to chat with, because I feel like personally, as a nerdy entrepreneur, kind of forward thinker person, I feel like blockchain type technologies are very likely the future, if not a future, of commerce, and they're important and they're not going anywhere. So skate to where the puck is going to be. I feel like I need to get myself up to speed as a photographer, as a business owner, on how that stuff works. But this is why we need to do a show on this, Ron Pepper, because I'm literally afraid of it right now, and because I keep seeing these every time I'm like, oh yeah, this is cool. Then I see a headline, Bitcoin dropped from $1,700, per coin down to $400 overnight. I'm like, I can't afford that. Literally, I can't. So I need you to demystify that, man.
That's that's one thing that, again, I'm not an expert. I'm just I'm interested in it. I've been interested in it way before anyone considered making a whole bunch of money on it. Like when Bitcoin came out, I kept being shocked every time it went up to $17, shocked. Went up to $80, shocked. Went up to, that happened over and over and over. I never considered it as that. And sure, I would like to make some money off it, but I'm not going to. I'm interested in it for its world-changing technology in the future. And unfortunately, everyone's distracted by all of this ups and downs and volatility. And that's true. Like, be careful. Like, don't put money in. I don't even really want to talk about it from an investment standpoint, because I consider that a distraction. Because when currency doesn't require a central bank anymore, that has world-changing implications. But it's not just currency. There's so many things that smart people are figuring out on how to use it. Mm-hmm. There's like we mentioned, I'm putting together some ideas on presenting what it means to us in our industry. And I think first of this one we mentioned really quickly is a small one right now, but I think it represents a bigger change in the way we share our things. There's intellectual property. We may not have to use the Library of Congress to register our images later. Not yet, but they're working on, like Kodak is working on that. Mm-hmm. And that might become the standard. I saw an announcement of, it's not started yet, but there's another company is using this whole blockchain thing to do to sell stock photography. Yeah. I don't know how they're going to do it yet. I haven't researched. I don't have time. I wish I had time to research all this stuff.
Yeah, the whole space is interesting, right? I mean, the whole space is interesting. For, like you and I talked about offline, Ron. Just the idea of being able to, even from a photographer standpoint, being able to do limited edition prints where you, like right now, you could say, yeah, trust me, I'm only going to make 100 of these, and you stamp them all 100, and I'm going to destroy the digital file after I print them. So this is a limited edition. You could really, with blockchain technology, you could literally go in and create real physical, uncopyable versions of your art and sell them so they would have intrinsic value, right?
I don't know if it's quite like that, but there's a way of, what they say is that, so if I send you a digital photo right now on email, you have it and I have it. Mm-hmm. It's copied.
Yeah, exactly.
But blockchain allows a way. That's how the currency came about, is that if I send you it, then we both have it, and that's not currency. But they found a way to say that on this ledger that everybody can see, it's public, it's not private, unless you want it to be blah, blah, blah. So it says, I don't want it anymore, you want it now. And that's the point. And so they're taking off with these things, and we're just at the embryonic stage of all this right now. And it's just exciting. And the whole point of this conversation is I would like anybody listening or watching just to be open to what it really means outside of those headlines that you see on the mainstream media that doesn't understand what's going on.
Right.
That there's very volatile. I mean, the investing thing, don't even, be super careful of that. But look at what's going to happen, because all this volatility is going to eventually shake out, just like all of those startups. And I was right here in Silicon Valley for it during the .com boom. And I saw all these successes, all these failures come and go, but it shook out. And Google's there, Yahoo sort of is there, and all these internet companies are there. And this has a similarity, I really think. And I just hope that people be aware of that and think of it that way, and not of some crazy thing of investing in 3-letter things.
Right.
Just so much more than that.
Get educated on the whole thing before you dive in. That's kind of where I am now, is trying to get educated and understand it, and not, like you said, take media's opinion or their thoughts and guidance or fear of this potential new technology and let that dissuade me. I've never been that way, but I want I want to, like you and I talked about offline, Ron, this is different than saying, you know what, I'm gonna try the DX01, right? You know, what can it hurt when you're dealing with money and thousands of dollars and something that's fluctuating, even real or perceived? It gets scary, and you tend to like, you know what, let me go sit in the cheap seats for a while and see what happens before I jump in, right?
But remember, think about the media. My analogy will be, I think we're all old enough to be, I was right there out of college when the internet was new. And think about, go on YouTube and punch up things like morning shows or news shows talking about the internet, and see how horrible it sounds now, how dumb it sounds now, but we didn't know any better. I would have sounded the same way.
Yeah.
People asking, how do you pronounce the at? And talking about HTML, nobody would know that stuff.
Yeah.
And this is really similar. People, it's a new thing in the world, and there's so much lack of understanding on the news.
Well, Ron Pepper, before we leave this topic and move into the picks of the week, Ruth Happel is in the chat room, and Ruth brought up a very interesting perspective on this whole conversation, and that's the ecological impact of these what do you call them? The farms and these mining machines, and how much power the graphic processors take, and how much impact that has versus the gain on the other side. I'm sure you looked into that. What do you respond to that? How do you respond to that?
It's going to really out me with some of my views, but I mean,
that's what I'm here for.
How much power in the world do banks take up? I mean, use. Right? Yeah. The millions of physical places that they have to run and maintain, and light and heat and air condition, and not to mention all of the things we don't see in front of us going on that are in the banking industry. There's no comparison. Yeah. But at the same time, I haven't been a miner. I know it takes a lot of electricity, and I know it's a real thing. I don't want to poo-poo what she said. Like, I don't want to say it's just meaningless, but it's not. But there has to be. It has to do with having value. Like they say, what's the value in these currencies? Well, not anybody can mine it. There is some value in that. That's, if anybody could do it, then there wouldn't be. Anybody could go dig up gold in their own backyard. It wouldn't be worth anything. So, again, I'm not an expert in the area. I'm just saying that usually there are two sides to these things. Yeah. And I have not added up the impact of the power. But I do remember seeing one of these kind of charts, what are they called, infographics or something, where it gave me the idea about the banking thing. So assuming this infographic I saw was true, not fake news or whatever, then it was pretty shocking about how much power mining takes compared to how much the whole banking industry takes. And I won't even get into the other problems of the banking industry. I think we can all figure that out.
Yeah, subprime. Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys. Let's move on. Let's. There's so much talk. Ron Pepper, I want to invite you on to come on and do like a one-on-one with me and just sort of dive into this. This is a deep mini tentacled topic when it comes to this kind of thing. I think it's important, especially from a photographer standpoint. Even if you're not trying to make money on your photography, if you want to use blockchain type technologies to authenticate and to do limited editions, or I don't know, you're a developer and you want to create digitally signed Pokemon that people can go capture. You know?
Somebody did a couple. There are a couple of these things. I'll look it up more. There are some experiments out there and some art that's being done this way, and I'll get some more info. I'm trying to, like I say, I just need to find time to put together kind of a concise list and present it in a way that I'm not just talking out of my,
let's say out of the side of your neck. There you go.
Yeah. But at the same time, another thing that I would like photographers to do is when someone says, "Will you accept cryptocurrency as payment for shooting my whatever?" Yeah. It would be great if people were ready to say, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah, that sounds like a Giulio thing right there, right? Giulio, you're trying to put everything in the cloud.
Not really, actually.
If you could not have to take a physical check, and you could just say, "Yeah, here's my scan this code right here and send me $5,000." Wouldn't that be great?
Well, I just use, I take credit cards from clients. So
Yeah.
I'm like, use your credit card, get your points. The thing is, I think the blockchain technology is amazing. And I think it's got a bright future for a variety of applications. But as far as the currencies go, that's something that no doubt behind the scenes, governments and the heads of the Federal Reserve and other banks, and maybe, I mean, to get a little secret society kind of, conspiracy stuff, but like behind the scenes, the masters of the puppets are kind of watching us, because really the power is within the money, right? Money is debt, and if you are in debt, you're essentially a slave to who owns that debt.
Yep.
If someone is saying, hey, you guys don't have to play in that realm anymore, we have a new solution to the system, because we're talking about the underlying foundation of our system, of everything in the modern world. And someone's like, we're going to give you another new solution. By the time, if somebody makes it simple enough where the average person that walks into Walmart understands it enough, for this, they're like, I'm going to go buy my flip-flops with cryptocurrency, and they can leave, there's going to be problems. It'll if it's not controlled by like a big bank at that point, there will be somebody makes some mistake where they get caught in the spider web, and the feds will come down and boom.
Yeah.
I hate to be that guy, but I mean, it's like, you think about it, like what was the guy that had Mega, right? What was his name Kim.com or whatever. The guy had Mega. Yeah. And they came and got him. He was doing stuff that was just pushing the boundaries. And as soon as he kind of stepped into that spider web, they just basically came in, grabbed him, out he goes. So, I'm not trying to be like fatalistic, but
I'm going to be fatalistic.
I don't see how in our lifetimes that there's going to be another monetary system.
Well, we could go on and on with this topic, guys. I want to, like I said, I want to do a separate show on this. Ron, give us your closing remarks on cryptocurrencies.
Okay. Yeah, the banks are powerful, and they're not going to go down without a fight. But do they have to go down at all? Not really. I mean, this whole, from the currency aspect, that can happen without their permission. The only thing that can happen is they can ask their friends in government to squash it legally and threaten people for not hurting anybody. So like, if we're exchanging these currencies and we're not hurting anybody, it's all voluntary between us. Yeah, they can arrest us for that. They sure can. Is that going to happen in America? I mean, it's happening. It has happened, I believe, in other parts of the world, or been threatened already. Is that going to happen here? I mean, I hope not. And I hope, there's going to be a lot of propaganda about it. But again, this is all, as long as it's all voluntary transactions, who's the bad guy there?
Yeah. All right.
What if when Nikon goes down, we just use like their lenses, which are no longer in production, as currency? Because if there's only so many lenses out there.
Well, you're just bartering now.
Well, isn't that kind of what's going on with, with anything else?
Ron, that's Giulio trolling you. Don't take the bait.
Hey man, if you have a lens that I want and I have something you want, we can trade.
There you go.
There you go. That's called value. Yeah. All right, guys, that's the end of our featured discussion. We're gonna move into the picks of the week segment, and then we're gonna dive into the chat. Just want to remind the chat room, get your questions in there. We're doing something a little bit different on this episode of This Week in Photo. I'm actually gonna end the show. The streamed version of the show will continue, so the chat room will be active and all that, and we'll continue the discussion, but the recorded version of the show is going to end after the picks of the week. So you folks that are subscribed to the podcast, this is an incentive for you to log on live next week and hang out with us, because the after party is where all the goodness is going to happen. So we're going to do that, but we're going to do the picks of the week, and then I'm going to terminate the show, and then we're going to continue in the chat room and keep going. So for this week's pick of the week, Giulio Sciorio, what do you got your eye on?
I wonder.
Well, I was going to say Lightroom CC, and I talked about that already, though. But I'm going to say my brand new, old but brand new EM5 Mark II.
Oh, that's the first one I started with, right?
No, this is the Mark II.
Oh, that's the Mark II.
Yeah, it's Mark II. anyways, I've been liking it a lot. I'm selling my A7R III and I'm moving back to Micro Four Thirds. I just really enjoy the Micro Four Thirds cameras.
I didn't know you left. You left Micro Four Thirds and went to Sony, and now you're back again.
Oh, dude! Since I left Panasonic, I switched like 6 times.
Wait, you have an A7R III. You might want to trade.
There you go.
No, I want to trade for dollars.
Exactly.
Not cryptocurrency.
Will you take Bitcoin?
No, the thing is, like, I love Panasonic, and I was like, basically, I wanted to try everything. I was very happy with Panasonic, but I'm like, let me just try. So I had a 2 5D Mark IVs, I had an A7R II for a while. I had 3 or 4 Fujis. And then, I just like, they're all really good. Everything is really awesome. But for me, the shoe that fits my foot the best, not the best, but right now is this Olympus, and I've been really digging it.
That's cool. That's cool. I remember on Olympus, that was the first mirrorless camera I had, was the OMD. What was that? The OMD Mark III
EM1.
EM1, right? And I remember the one feature that, as a previous film shooter, that had my jaw on the ground, was the fact that you could have it show you a long exposure drawing over time. So you put your camera in a tripod, aim it at a river or whatever, and you could see the water just getting more and more blurred, and then you could stop it and say, yeah, that's it right there, right? So that was really cool. Ron, you could do that with yours, right? You're an Olympus shooter.
Yeah, I have a EM1 Mark nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, Mark nothing. Mark not.
Mark no. No Mark. And I like I say, I praise and I complain about the cameras because I do like them all. I'm not picking on anybody and all that, but I've had some problems with that. It actually, when I find one of the downsides to the mirrorless for me, and it's an older one by now, I realize it's probably gotten better, but it crashes like a computer sometimes.
Oh.
Like I had that when I was I was in, for Christ's sake, I was in Prague, once in a lifetime spot. Somebody was watching the kid. I had a moment to get my shot. And I was using that feature you were talking about right at dusk, after dusk, and it just crashed like like a computer that you don't like, fill in the blank you don't like. And I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, well,
just one of the more.
Well, you can't blame the entire system on that one crash.
No,
but,
like I say, it's a great camera. I like it, but it does have some things. Hey, my Mac crashes from pretty rarely, but it does crash. But I highly prefer it. I'm not saying it's crap. That's not the point. I'm just saying that there are some things that happen.
Yeah. There's always some things. Well, while I'm on you, man, why don't you give us your pick of the week? What's the Ron Pepper pick of the week?
Oh yeah, I got an easy one. It's an app. It's the HDR bracketing calculator app. Is out for iPhone or iOS. I guess it's iPhone.
And what does that give me?
So if you're out walking around in a nice scene outside and you want to bracket, you probably just use the meter and then you just set it to take 3 shots. That's what everybody does, over and under, right? But if you get into a situation like this is my thing that happens to me, you get into an interior situation where it's way wider dynamic range than you really think, you really realize until you start photographing it. 3 is not enough, and you really need to be deliberate about how you're shooting. So the calculator helps people kind of get their head around that. So
nice.
It gets confusing when you I always tell people when you're starting out, use a meter, like a spot meter in your camera is all you need. Put it on a spot, walk to the darkest place, get a meter reading, walk to the brightest place, aim it out there and get a meter reading. And you can have this, say 10 to 12 stops of difference. And these days, most of us don't think in stops. We don't sit here and calculate 30th, 60th, 125th one. And I can do that in the whole stops, but I can't even do it if you're talking about thirds of stops and stuff. So anyway, the calculator gives you an easy way to, anybody, if you're listening, try it out, hdrsoft.com/EV, like exposure value. That's a free web version. And it's, you plug in the amounts that you found from your camera on the bright and the dark areas. And then you say what your camera is capable of doing, and it tells you how to capture it.
Nice.
Like it tells you how to set that middle exposure. Almost every camera has you set a middle exposure, and then you choose how many over and how many under. And that gets confusing. Once you do it for a while, you can almost walk in a room and just set it by your own site after you've been doing it a while. But getting your head around it first, it takes some time. So It's free on the web version. I think it's $3 for the iOS version. If you go to hdrsoft.com/EV, at the bottom, I think there's a link to the app if you want to get it for the phone, because again, I hear that request a lot. Hey, can that be on the phone?
Yeah.
So there they go. And it's not Android yet. However, you don't have to buy it on iOS either, because it doesn't take any data. If you go to that URL I just gave on Safari or on a browser on Android, whatever that is, you can still operate it even without a data connection.
Oh, it's like a web app then. Cool.
Yeah. So the amount that gets transferred is so minuscule that it doesn't really need it. So you can still try it out. So if anybody's mystified about how to really bracket the heck out of something and get it all right to start with, because if you get it right, the processing is going to be way easier, and you're going to suddenly go, oh, that's what I've been missing.
This is what everyone's talking about.
That's why I get those ugly fake results, because I didn't cover the range. So if you do, then it makes it a lot easier. So I like that app. It's kind of cool. Like get people maybe trying it again. So
very cool. All right. Well, thank you guys both for those picks of the week, Giulio, with your, and I'll link to those. We'll link to those in the description for this in the blog post show notes, and also in the YouTube video. So if you didn't catch that, just look below and you'll find it. So let's close off this segment of the show, guys. Giulio Sciorio, where can people go to keep up with you and check out your work and sign up for that small camera big picture relaunch?
Best thing is just go to smallcamerabigpicture.com. If you want to see anything about my work and specifically, just Google me.
All right, perfect. That's easy. Look at that, streamlined. That's Giulio Sciorio. All right, Ron Pepper, can you beat that? The streamlined Giulio outro.
panoramanetwork.com.
That's it. panoramanetwork.com. All right, guys, that's it for this episode of This Week in Photo. Like I said, we're going to continue the after party for the chat room and answer all the questions. Folks that are listening to this on the podcast or watching the YouTube video, tune in next week and you can hang out with us in the chat room. That's it for this episode of This Week in Photo. It's time to take that lens cap off. This is TWiP.